Prison food exposed. What inmates really eat in Supermax prisons. The tray that changed everything. The metal door slammed shut, and the sound echoed through Marcus's tiny Supermax cell. Moments later, a steel meal tray slid through the slot. Marcus picked it up slowly, already knowing it wouldn't look good, but this time, something was different. On the tray sat a dry brick of peanut butter, a scoop of something gray and mushy, a slice of bread that felt like plastic, and a small milk carton that smelled old the moment he touched it. But none of that is what scared him. When he lifted the tray, he saw 3 words scratched into the bottom. "Don't eat tonight." Marcus froze. His heart started beating faster. Was this a warning? A prank? Or a message from someone inside the kitchen? Then he noticed something else. A thin layer of strange gray dust gathered in the corner of the tray. It wasn't seasoning. It wasn't dirt. It didn't belong there. Marcus stared at the tray, slowly realizing that this wasn't just bad prison food. Something was wrong inside the Supermax kitchen. Something he wasn't supposed to know. And tonight, that tray was trying to warn him. The kitchen nobody sees. Most people think a prison kitchen is like a school cafeteria, bright lights, clean counters, cooks wearing gloves. But in Supermax prisons, the truth is far from that. In places like ADX Florence or Pelican Bay's SHU, prisoners never see the kitchen. Everything is hidden behind locked doors, buzzing alarms, and strict rules. Inmates eat alone in their cells, and guards deliver food through a slot without ever checking it closely. Inside the actual kitchen, things happen fast. Real fast. Frozen food gets dumped into boiling water. Powdered eggs get mixed in big plastic buckets. Canned vegetables get opened by the dozens. Mystery meat gets pressed into patties that all look the same. And the food is rushed out quickly, because the kitchen is understaffed and the officers want trays delivered on time. Some meals come out okay. Others come out cold, old, or barely recognizable. But for inmates in solitary confinement, the food is even worse. Almost no seasoning. No special diets unless medically forced. No real choices. Just whatever the kitchen sends. Marcus learned this from Dre, another inmate who had once worked in the prison kitchen before being moved into Supermax. Dre told him once, "The kitchen floor is colder than the cells. The rules change every day. And when they're angry, trust me, nobody cares what ends up on your tray." Meals are basic. Breakfast is usually powdered eggs, glue-thick oatmeal, and maybe a piece of fruit that might already be going bad. Lunch is a thin sandwich, sometimes a small snack, and warm metallic-tasting water. Dinner is beans, rice, a mystery patty, and a small fruit cup if you're lucky. And then there's the punishment meal, Nutriloaf. A hard block made from leftovers smashed together. No flavor, no sauce. Just a cold, dry chunk meant to teach discipline. But tonight, Marcus wasn't thinking about Nutriloaf. He was thinking about the message under his tray. Who wrote it? And what exactly was he being warned not to eat? He stared at the gray dust again, and his stomach tightened. Something inside this prison kitchen was wrong, and someone wanted him to know. The warning. Marcus placed the tray on the floor and backed away from it like it was a live wire. His cell felt smaller now. Quieter. Even the humming vent above his head sounded different, like it was listening. Messages don't just appear in Supermax. Nothing happens by accident. For hours, Marcus sat on his bunk staring at those 3 words scratched into the metal. "Don't eat tonight." He replayed the last few days in his mind. Had he argued with a guard? Had he gotten into trouble with another inmate? Impossible. He hadn't seen another face in weeks. So who warned him? The next morning, breakfast arrived. A guard pushed the tray through the slot without looking at Marcus. But Marcus noticed something immediately. The same gray dust. Now it wasn't just in a corner, it dusted the entire scoop of eggs. This wasn't normal. This wasn't a mistake. Marcus tapped lightly on the steel toilet pipe, the unofficial Supermax code, used by inmates to communicate through the plumbing system. Fuzz, tap tap, fuzz. A pattern only one person understood, Dre. It took a minute before a faint reply came back through the metal. 3 slow taps, Dre's signal. Marcus whispered through the pipe opening, keeping his voice low in case a guard walked by. Something's wrong with the food. He listened. Silence. Then Dre's voice came back, shaky but clear. They switched suppliers. Cheap powder. Some batches get mold if they sit too long. If it's gray, don't eat it. Mold. In the eggs. Suddenly the warning made sense, but something still bothered Marcus. Who scratched the message on my tray? He whispered. This time, Dre didn't reply right away. The silence felt heavier than the concrete walls. Finally, Dre said quietly, "Someone in the kitchen's trying to help you. They must have seen your batch." "Why me?" Marcus asked. Dre's answer sent a chill down his spine. "Because last week, 3 guys got sick. Real sick. And the kitchen covered it up." Marcus sat completely still. Now he understood the danger. This wasn't about taste. This wasn't about bad cooking. This was about survival. And if someone was risking punishment just to warn him, then whatever was happening in that kitchen was worse than he imagined. The secret in the trays. Marcus didn't touch the breakfast tray. He slid it back toward the door, his stomach growling but his instincts louder. If 3 inmates had gotten sick, if someone inside the kitchen was risking punishment to warn him, then this was not just bad food. Something was happening behind those kitchen doors that nobody outside the prison would ever believe. By noon, another tray slid through the slot. Lunch. Marcus hesitated, then took a slow look. A sandwich. A small fruit cup. A cookie that looked older than he was. And water that smelled like metal. But what caught his attention was the tray itself. Another scratch. This time, just one simple line. Check under bread. Marcus lifted the top slice. There was again the same gray dust, just a tiny pinch, pressed into the corner of the sandwich. He didn't panic this time. He felt something different. A pattern. Whoever was warning him knew exactly where the contamination was. And they knew when it would show up. Marcus waited until count time, when guards walked by checking every cell, and whispered again into the toilet pipe. "Dre, what's going on in that kitchen? Tell me everything." The pipe vibrated softly as Dre replied. "There's a storage room behind the kitchen, where they keep the dry goods, flour, eggs, milk powder, stuff like that. Sometimes the boxes leak. Sometimes water gets in. The mold starts fast." Marcus listened closely, leaning toward the pipe. Dre continued. "They're supposed to throw those boxes out. But sometimes they don't. They're rushed. They're understaffed. And some of those guys, they just don't care." Marcus swallowed hard. "Is it dangerous?" he asked. A long pause. Then Dre whispered, "For some inmates? Yeah. Real dangerous. Especially those with bad stomachs or weak immune systems. That's why 3 men got sick last week. They all ate the same batch." Marcus felt a cold wave wash through his body. He looked back at the tray. The warning. The dust. The pattern. Someone inside the kitchen was watching the food closely and making sure Marcus didn't eat the wrong tray. But why him? That question stayed in his mind all afternoon. When dinner finally arrived, Marcus waited before touching it. He inspected the plate, the corners, the food, the edges. Nothing strange this time. No dust. No scratch marks. No warning. But that almost worried him more. Why warn him twice? Then go silent? Deep inside his cell, Marcus sat with the tray untouched, thinking about what Dre said, thinking about the moldy storage room, thinking about the 3 men who got sick. And for the first time since entering Supermax, he felt like there was a story happening behind the walls. One buried in the kitchen, hidden in the trays, whispered through pipes, and nowhere near finished. Because warnings don't stop without a reason. Something, or someone, was waiting on the other side of that silence. The name behind the warning. Marcus barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the scratched message on the tray, then the gray dust, then the silence. By morning, his stomach was empty but his mind was full. Something was wrong in that kitchen, and the silence after the second warning didn't feel like safety. It felt like danger. When breakfast arrived, Marcus checked the tray carefully. No dust. No scratches. Nothing unusual. But as he pushed the untouched tray away, he heard something, soft steps outside his door. Not the normal heavy boots of a guard. These were lighter, slower, cautious. Then a whisper. Marcus. He froze. Nobody calls your name in Supermax. Nobody. He stepped closer to the steel door and whispered back, Who is that? The voice replied, low and quick. Don't talk loud. Cameras don't pick whispers but mics can. Marcus felt his heartbeat rise. This wasn't Dre. This wasn't an inmate. Who are you? He whispered. A short pause. Kitchen worker. Those two words hit him harder than the warnings on the trays. The voice continued. I saw your batch again. That dry goods room? It leaked last week. They didn't throw everything out. Marcus whispered, Why are you helping me? The voice hesitated, then answered quietly, Because I used to be where you are. Marcus felt a chill slide down his back. The voice continued, I know what it's like to depend on those trays. And I know what happens when the food is bad and nobody cares. Marcus pressed closer to the door. Those 3 men, the ones who got sick, were they in solitary too? A heavier pause than before. One of them didn't get better. Marcus swallowed hard. What happened to him? The voice replied softly. They moved him out. Medical wing. Haven't seen him since. Medical wing in Supermax rarely meant something simple. It usually meant the situation was serious, or worse. Marcus leaned closer and whispered, What's your name? The worker whispered back. Call me Seven. Seven. A code name. A nickname. Something he used to stay hidden. Why did the warnings stop yesterday? Marcus asked. Seven replied immediately. Because they put cameras over the tray area. I had to wait until break to come here. I don't know how long I can keep warning you. Marcus felt the weight of those words. Seven was risking his job, maybe even his freedom, just to make sure Marcus stayed safe. But before Marcus could say more, the soft footsteps backed away. Seven whispered one last thing through the door. If your lunch tray smells sour or looks pale, don't touch it. They're serving the same batch today. Then he was gone. No face. No identity. Just a shadow in the hallway, a voice in the dark. Marcus stood frozen for a long time. Not because of fear, but because he finally understood something. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't prison food being prison food. This was a problem the kitchen was trying to hide. A problem that could hurt people. And Marcus? He was right in the middle of it, whether he wanted to be or not. Lunch was only 2 hours away. And now he knew something he wished he didn't. The danger wasn't coming from other inmates. It was coming from the kitchen. The bad batch. 2 hours later, Marcus sat on the edge of his bunk, listening for the sound he now feared more than anything, the rattle of a food cart rolling down the tier. When it came, his stomach tightened. Metal wheels. Rattling trays. Keys jingling. A guard calling names. Then the sound stopped right in front of his door. The small slot opened, and a tray slid through. The guard didn't look at Marcus. He never did. The tray hit the floor with a dull, heavy thud. Marcus stared at it. The exact meal Seven warned him about. He crouched slowly, keeping his face far from the tray, and inspected it the way a detective checks a crime scene. A sandwich. A small serving of fruit. A snack. Warm water. It looked normal, almost too normal. Marcus leaned closer. He checked the bread, the corners, the edges, the meat, looking for that pale gray dust. Nothing. But then he remembered Seven's exact words. If your tray smells sour or looks pale, don't touch it. Marcus lifted the top slice of bread and sniffed. At first, nothing. Then, a faint sour smell. Barely there. Almost hidden. His stomach dropped. It wasn't strong, but it wasn't supposed to be there at all. He pushed the tray away instantly. But something else bothered him now. Why wasn't there a warning scratch this time? Why didn't Seven mark it? Why didn't he find a way to signal it? Marcus froze completely. Unless Seven did try. And couldn't. Suddenly, the hallway outside erupted in loud voices, guards shouting, boots running, keys clanging. Something was happening. Marcus stood up and pressed his ear against the door. Muffled yelling. Heavy movement. Command. Kitchen worker, against the wall. Don't move. Marcus's blood turned cold. They caught someone. Someone from the kitchen. Someone who shouldn't have been in the hallway earlier. Someone who whispered to him. Someone named 7. Marcus felt a wave of panic. If they caught 7? What did they know? What did they see? Did they find out he warned inmates about the food? The shouting continued, then faded as they dragged someone away. Marcus couldn't see anything, but he knew they had taken 7. He sat down slowly on the bunk, staring at the untouched tray. Suddenly, Marcus realized something painful and clear. 7 didn't stop warning him yesterday because he was scared. He stopped because someone was watching him. Someone who noticed. Someone who didn't like what he was doing. The kitchen cover-up wasn't a rumor anymore. It wasn't a guess. It wasn't suspect behavior. It was real. It was happening. And now one man was already taken because of it. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. Not wild anger. Cold anger. If 7 was in trouble because he tried to protect him, then Marcus couldn't stay quiet anymore. Not about the mold. Not about the bad batches. Not about the sickness. Not about the warning trays. He didn't know how or when, but he knew this. He had to find out what was happening inside that kitchen before someone else got hurt. Lunch remained untouched on the floor. Marcus didn't take a single bite. And when dinner time came, things got even stranger. The empty tray. Hours passed. The noise from earlier, the shouting, the boots, the guards dragging someone away, slowly faded, but the tension didn't. Marcus sat on his bunk, staring at the cold lunch tray on the floor. His stomach hurt from hunger, but fear held it tight like a fist. The dinner cart arrived. He heard it long before it reached his cell. Wheels squeaking. Trays clattering. The same pattern every day. But tonight the sound felt different, slower, heavier, like whoever was pushing the cart didn't want to be there. The cart stopped in front of Marcus's door. The slot opened. A tray slid in. The slot slammed shut. And then, silence. No footsteps. No guard talking. Just silence. Marcus looked at the tray. For the first time since entering Supermax, he froze for a reason he never expected. The tray was empty. Completely empty. No beans. No rice. No loaf. Not even bread. Just a clean, metal tray. Marcus blinked, confused. Was this a mistake? A punishment? A message? He pushed the tray with his foot, checking the underside. Nothing scratched this time. Nothing hidden. No dust. No warning. Just emptiness. Marcus knelt down slowly. This wasn't laziness. This was an oversight. This was intentional. A fully empty tray meant one thing in Supermax. A silent signal. A message delivered by someone who couldn't speak. Someone who knew 7 had been taken. Someone who wanted Marcus to understand that tonight's food wasn't safe. He whispered into the toilet pipe. Dre. Dre, are you there? Answer. A moment later, the familiar taps came through the pipe, Dre's signal. Marcus whispered fast. They gave me an empty tray. What's going on? The pipe vibrated softly. Then Dre's voice came through, whispering sharply. It's the batch. Dinner came from the same dry storage as the breakfast mix. Officers complained about the smell. They're trying to hide it. Marcus swallowed hard. Dre continued. Some officers refused to pass the food, so they sent empty trays to a few cells. Only a few. Only the ones they trust not to complain. Marcus sat back against the wall, stunned. Why me? He whispered. The reply came quickly. Because the kitchen knows 7 warned you. They're trying to keep you alive quietly until things blow over. Marcus stared at the empty tray again. A quiet protection. A hidden agreement. A way to avoid another incident like the men who got sick. Is 7 okay? Marcus whispered. Silence. Long silence. Finally, Dre answered. They moved him. That's all I know. Could be good, could be bad. Marcus clenched his fists. He didn't know if 7 was in trouble, or if he was being punished, or if he was never coming back. But one thing was clear. The kitchen problem wasn't over. It was growing. Someone was still trying to warn him, now without scratches, now without words, now with an empty tray. And if the officers were sending out food they didn't trust themselves. This wasn't just bad food. This was a crisis behind bars. A hidden story buried behind steel doors and silence. And Marcus was right in the center of it. The sick wing. Marcus barely slept that night. He kept thinking about Seven, dragged away, punished for trying to help. And he kept thinking about the empty tray, the silent message that something was still wrong. By morning, he felt weak from hunger, but he knew he couldn't eat anything unless he was sure it was safe. When breakfast came, the tray slid through the slot as usual. This time it had food on it, powdered eggs, hard toast, and a small apple. No dust. No sour smell. But as Marcus inspected the tray, he heard something unusual from down the tier. Coughing. Harsh, deep coughing that echoed through the hallway. Then another voice, groaning in pain. Then another, someone gagging. Marcus stepped closer to his door. It wasn't just one inmate. It wasn't just two. It was multiple cells. One by one, the sound spread down the block. Men coughing, wheezing, spitting, struggling. Marcus's chest tightened. Dre tapped the pipe rapidly, fast taps, urgent. Marcus crouched and whispered, "Dre, what's happening?" Dre's voice came back shaky, something Marcus had never heard from him before. "They served the bad batch yesterday to the other side of the unit. Not your row. The other row." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Are they sick?" he whispered. Dre replied, "Worse than sick. They're moving them. One by one." Marcus listened carefully. He heard heavy boots. Medical carts. A stretcher rolling. Someone vomiting. Someone begging for help. Marcus pressed his forehead against the cold metal door. "Did they tell the officers?" he whispered. Dre let out a soft, bitter laugh. "Officers don't want paperwork. If they admit something's wrong with the food, they get investigated. They don't want that." Marcus felt anger rise again, but deeper this time, heavier. "This could kill someone," he whispered. Dre replied quietly, "It already almost did last week. And now it's happening again." Marcus sat back on the floor, weak and furious. The truth was in front of him now. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a rare bad meal. This was a repeating problem, moldy supplies, rushed cooking, hidden warnings, and officers too scared or too lazy to report it. And now, inmates were paying the price. The coughing down the tier grew louder. Someone yelled in pain. Someone else called for water. Marcus closed his eyes as Dre whispered through the pipe. "They're moving the whole row to the medical wing. They call it a precaution. But we know what it really is." Marcus whispered, "Cover up." Dre tapped the metal pipe twice, his way of saying, "Exactly." Marcus realized something important. The empty tray wasn't only a warning. It was protection. Someone was still looking out for him, even after Seven was gone. But Marcus also knew something else. If the sickness was spreading, if the kitchen was still serving contaminated meals, if the officers were hiding it, then this story wasn't ending anytime soon. In fact, it was just beginning to crack open. Because the question wasn't if someone would speak up, it was who would break the silence first. And Marcus knew that sooner or later, it might have to be him. The officer who knew. The coughing on the other side of the tier didn't stop. Even after the stretchers rolled away, even after the medical team left, the air felt heavy, tense, and full of secrets. Marcus sat on the bed, trying to stay calm, when suddenly, clink, his door slot opened again. Not mealtime. Not medication time. Not count time. Marcus stepped forward slowly. An officer was standing there. Not one he recognized. Not the usual guys. This one looked different. Older. Tired eyes. A face that looked like it had seen too much prison and not enough sleep. The officer didn't look at Marcus directly. He kept staring down the hallway instead. Then he said quietly, without moving his lips much, "Don't touch breakfast tomorrow." Marcus froze. His throat tightened. The officer continued, still staring straight ahead. "The investigation team is coming. You don't want to be the one eating the wrong tray when they show up. Just leave it where it is." Marcus whispered, "You know about the bad batch?" The officer didn't react for a moment. Then he sighed, deep and tired. I've been working here 22 years. This place has problems bigger than you know. Bigger than any of us. Marcus stepped closer to the slot. Why are you telling me this? He asked quietly. The officer finally looked at him, just for 1 second. In that second, Marcus saw something rare in Supermax. Humanity. The officer whispered. Seven was right to warn you. Marcus's heart jumped. Hearing Seven's name felt like someone had touched an open wound. Do you know where they took him? He asked. The officer looked away again. He's in admin holding. They're questioning him. Hard. Marcus felt sick. Is he okay? The officer didn't answer. He didn't need to. Marcus could read the silence. Finally, the officer leaned slightly closer to the door and spoke in a low voice. Here's what you need to know. They're trying to blame the kitchen workers. Not the storage. Not the supervisors. Not the officers who ignored the problem. Marcus clenched his jaw. So they're covering it up again, he said softly. The officer nodded slightly. They don't want another news story about prison food. They don't want lawsuits. They don't want the warden blamed. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Is anyone going to fix it? He asked. The officer sighed. Maybe. Maybe not. But for now, stay smart. Don't eat anything that smells wrong. And if a tray looks too clean, too pale, or too rushed, skip it. Marcus whispered, Why are you helping me? The officer hesitated, then said, Because the sick wing is full. And I don't want to see another inmate dragged out coughing until he can't breathe. The hallway suddenly filled with footsteps, another officer approaching. The man instantly straightened up and shut the tray slot hard. His last words came through the metal like a warning from a friend. Remember what I said. Don't eat. Then he walked away. Silent. Heavy. Carrying secrets with every step. Marcus sat back on his bunk, pulse racing. Now he knew the truth. It wasn't just the kitchen workers who knew. It wasn't just Seven. It wasn't just Dre. Even the officers knew something was wrong. And if they were warning him too, then whatever was coming next was bigger than just bad food. It was bigger than one prison. It was a system-wide problem, and it was about to break open. The announcement. The next morning felt heavier than usual. Colder. Quieter. Like the whole prison was holding its breath. Marcus sat on the edge of his bunk, waiting for breakfast, thinking about the officer's warning. Don't eat tomorrow. That, tomorrow was now. He heard the food cart coming, its wheels squeaking more than usual, like whoever was pushing it didn't want to be on duty. The cart stopped. Keys jingled. The slot opened. A tray slid in. Marcus didn't touch it. He waited until the guard walked away before stepping closer. He inhaled, slow, careful. And there it was. The same faint sour smell Seven had warned him about. Barely noticeable, but real. Marcus shoved the tray aside with his foot. He wasn't eating that. Not today, not ever. Then something unusual happened. A loud buzzer blared through the hallway. Bzzz. All cell lights flickered on. Then the intercom clicked. A distorted voice spoke. Attention inmates. Breakfast distribution is paused. Remain in your cells. Marcus's heart skipped. Paused? That had never happened before. The intercom continued. A routine health and safety inspection is being conducted. Please remain calm. Routine? Dre tapped on the pipe instantly, short, fast, panic taps. Marcus crouched down. What's happening? He whispered. Dre replied. That's not routine. The inspectors are here. They're checking the kitchen first. They never check the kitchen. Marcus felt electricity run through his body. So the officer was right. Something triggered this. Maybe the sickness. Maybe the complaints. Maybe Seven. Marcus whispered, Is this good or bad? Dre replied, Depends on what they find and who they blame. Marcus leaned back, trying to calm his breathing. For the next hour, the hallway stayed silent. No food cart. No guards. No movement. Then, footsteps. A group. Walking slowly. Purposefully. Voices. Clipboards. Radios. Cameras. Inspectors. Marcus pressed his ear to the door. He heard one of them say, How long has the food smelled like this? Another replied, Check the storage room. That's where the problem usually starts. Another voice, harsher. Who signed off on these batches? Marcus felt something shift internally. For the first time since this started, someone in power was asking the right questions. Then the scariest question of all. Where is the kitchen worker you detained yesterday? Marcus's blood turned cold. 7. Another voice answered. He's in admin holding. They're deciding what to do with him. The inspector replied sharply. We need to talk to him. Now Marcus understood everything. 7 wasn't the target. 7 was the witness. And the kitchen wasn't trying to protect him, they were trying to silence him. The footsteps faded again as the group moved further down the tier. Marcus sat back on the bed. His hands were shaking, but not from fear. From realization. The truth was about to come out. But the problem wasn't over. Because now that the inspectors were inside the kitchen, someone, somewhere, was fighting to hide the mistakes. And Marcus knew how prisons work. When people get cornered, when they're scared of being exposed, they make desperate choices. This wasn't just about moldy food anymore. It was about blame, punishment, reputation, control. And somewhere inside that building, 7 was sitting in a room, alone, waiting for someone to decide his fate. Whether he lived freely, suffered quietly, or disappeared completely, depended on what happened in the next few hours. The interrogation room. The inspector's footsteps faded down the tier, but Marcus couldn't shake the heaviness in his chest. 7 was somewhere in this building, alone, tired, probably scared, and everything now depended on what he said, or what they forced him to say. Marcus paced his small cell, listening for anything, voices, movements, clues. Nothing at first. Then quietly the pipe tapped again. Marcus crouched down fast. What's happening now? He whispered. Dre didn't waste time. They moved 7. Took him to interview room 3. That's where they question staff when something goes wrong. Marcus's stomach tightened. Is that good? He asked. Dre hesitated, then replied. Depends who's in the room with him. Inspectors want answers. The warden wants silence. Marcus knew exactly what that meant. If 7 spoke, he could expose the moldy storage, the ignored complaints, the officers who never reported anything. But if the warden got to him first, they could blame him for everything. Call him careless. Say he contaminated food. Say it was employee negligence. They do that all the time. Marcus whispered. Do you think they'll let him talk? Dre's reply came slowly. Only if they think he can't hurt them. Marcus felt anger rising again, but it was controlled, sharp, the kind that comes when you finally see the full picture. Meanwhile, the hallway suddenly crackled with radio chatter. An officer's voice. Room 3 is secured. Another voice. Inspector wants the documents first. Marcus pressed his ear harder against the steel door. A third voice, lower, calmer. Bring him in. Marcus closed his eyes. He could picture it. A tiny gray interrogation room. A metal table. 2 chairs. 7 walking in with his hands shaking. A supervisor glaring at him. An inspector ready to ask real questions. Then the sound that made Marcus freeze. A sharp slam of a door shutting. Interview room 3 was occupied now. Minutes passed. Long minutes. Heavy minutes. Marcus sat down on the floor, imagining every detail. What were they asking him? What was he saying? Was he protecting himself? Was he protecting Marcus? Was he telling the truth? Then the intercom clicked on again, this time without warning. A voice spoke. All units, kitchen operations are suspended until further notice. Staff assigned to food services are to report for mandatory review. Marcus's eyes widened. Mandatory review. That meant something big was happening. Something real. He whispered into the pipe. That's because of 7, isn't it? Dre replied instantly. Yes. He talked. He told them everything. Marcus felt something lift off his chest, relief mixed with fear. What did he say? Marcus asked. Dre's voice dropped lower. Exactly what happened. The leaking boxes. The smell. The ignored reports. The supervisor's rushing orders. The storage mold. The batch they served yesterday. Marcus exhaled slowly. 7 had risked everything. But before he could feel hopeful, Dre added, "But the supervisors are trying to twist it. Saying 7 didn't report it soon enough. Saying he damaged boxes. Saying he caused all this." Marcus clenched his jaw. Of course they would. Blame the easiest target. Protect the higher-ups. "Is he okay?" Marcus asked quietly. Dre paused too long. Finally, they moved him again. To a private holding room. "I don't know why." A cold chill washed through Marcus. Private holding in Supermax could mean protection or punishment, and nobody on the tier could tell the difference. But one thing was clear now. The kitchen was shut down. The inspectors were digging. The truth was out. And 7 was in the middle of a fight he might not survive alone. Marcus sat back, his head pounding. He didn't know what would happen next. But he knew one thing. This wasn't just about food anymore. This was about corruption. About secrets. About silence breaking open. And Marcus wasn't just a witness now. He was part of the story. The truth they couldn't hide. The next 2 days inside Supermax felt different. Not louder. Not calmer. Just different. Breakfast trays didn't come. Lunch trays didn't come. Dinner trays didn't come. Instead, officers carried bottled water and sealed meal packs, something Marcus had never seen before. Real food. Safe food. Temporary food. The inspectors stayed in the building all day, moving from room to room. Interviewing. Reviewing. Asking questions nobody had dared to ask before. Marcus didn't hear from 7. Not a word. Not a sound. But he didn't need to. Because the changes happening around him were proof. 7 talked. 7 told the truth. 7 refused to stay silent. And even though Marcus didn't know if 7 was safe or punished, he knew this much. 7 didn't let the story die in the dark. Neither did Dre. Neither did the officer who whispered through the tray slot. Neither did the inspector who asked the hard questions. In a place built to break people, someone stood up. Someone spoke up. Someone risked everything to protect someone else. And that meant something. It meant the truth still had power, even behind steel doors, even under constant watch, even inside the most controlled place in America. Marcus sat on his bunk, finally breathing easier as he thought about everything that happened. The warning on the tray. The gray dust. The sickness. The empty dinner. 7's courage. Dre's loyalty. The officers' whispered advice. The inspectors stepping in. This wasn't just a story about prison food. It was a story about what happens when people who aren't supposed to care. People who aren't supposed to speak anyway. People who aren't supposed to matter anyway. And Marcus knew something else now, something bigger. If the truth can break through in a place like Supermax, then the truth can break through anywhere. He didn't know what would happen tomorrow. He didn't know if 7 would ever return to the kitchen. He didn't know if the warden would fix the system or hide it again. But he did know this. The silence was broken. The truth was exposed. And someone tried to protect him when they didn't have to. Marcus looked at the metal tray on his floor, the same kind he once feared. Now it meant something different. It meant a warning. A message. A voice from someone brave enough to say, "Don't eat tonight." He didn't know where 7 was now. But he whispered anyway, softly into the empty room. "Thank you." Because even in the darkest places, even in the most forgotten corners of America's prison system, there are people fighting to keep each other alive. And that is a truth no wall, no cell, and no locked door can hide.